welcome back to Whispers of RPG, your go-to spot for uncovering the coolest and creepiest secrets in the world of role-playing games. Today, we're stepping into the dark, mysterious streets of Gehrman to dive into the story of the Plain Doll from Bloodborne, a character that's as puzzling as she is captivating. We're about to explore her mysterious creation, the strange power behind her awakening, and what her story tells us about what it truly means to be alive. So grab your favorite snack, get cozy, and join me on this exciting journey into the heart of one of gaming's most haunting tales. Let's get started. Chapter 1: The Origins of Artificial Life. In the shadow-draped world of Bloodborne, where cosmic horror meets Victorian sensibilities, the concept of artificial life takes on a deeply unsettling dimension. The Plain Doll, as she is known to the hunters who frequent the hunter's dream, represents perhaps the most successful attempt at creating synthetic consciousness in all of From Software's dark fantasy catalog. But to understand her true nature, we must first examine the world that brought her into being. The city of Gehrman, built upon the discovery of the old blood and its miraculous healing properties, has always been a place where the boundaries between life and death, human and beast, reality and nightmare, blur beyond recognition. In this environment, the creation of artificial life seems almost inevitable, a natural progression of humanity's desire to transcend the limitations of flesh and mortality. The Plain Doll's creation story begins not in some sterile laboratory or arcane ritual chamber, but in the broken heart of an old hunter named Gehrman. Known as the first hunter, Gehrman established the original hunter workshop, training the first generation of hunters to combat the beast scourge that would eventually consume Gehrman. Among his students was a young woman from the noble houses of Canhurst, Lady Maria of the Astral Clocktower. The relationship between teacher and student is one of the most tragic elements in Bloodborne's law. Maria held great admiration for Gore, unknowing of his curious mania towards her. Here, we see the first seeds of what would eventually become the doll's creation, an unrequited love that would drive Gore to increasingly desperate measures to preserve what he could never truly possess. Lady Maria was exceptional among the hunters. Despite being a citizen of Canhurst, where they relished in extravagant uses of blood, she favored her racuo, which instead required dexterity and skill rather to wield effectively. This rejection of blood magic, despite her vile blood heritage, speaks to a moral compass that would eventually prove incompatible with the darker aspects of the hunt. The tragedy that would ultimately separate Maria from Gehrman occurred during an expedition to the fishing hamlet. At some point during her time as a hunter, Maria partook in the excursion by Burgenworth scholars to the fishing hamlet. This event, which involved the desecration of the great one known as CS and the slaughter of her offspring, would haunt Maria for the rest of her life. The events at the fishing hamlet represent a turning point, not just for Maria, but for our understanding of what drove Gehrman to create the doll. The expedition was a brutal affair that violated the corpse of CS and committed atrocities against her children. Maria's participation in these acts, likely under Gore's guidance, created a psychological wound that would never heal. After the events of the fishing hamlet, Maria threw her weapon away in disgust and renounced being a hunter. This moment of moral awakening, where Maria recognized the true horror of what they had done, marked the beginning of the end of her relationship with Gehrman and the hunting life he represented. Unable to live with the guilt of her actions, Maria would eventually take her own life, but not before retreating to the research hall, where she dedicated herself to caring for the patients, victims of the church's experiments with the old blood. She is seen sitting on a richly decorated chair, with blood pooling from her neck and wrist onto the floor. This final act of self-destruction left Gore alone, consumed by grief and an obsession that would ultimately give birth to the doll. Chapter 2: The creation born of obsession. The creation of the plain doll represents one of the most psychologically complex acts in Bloodborne's narrative. It was not born from scientific curiosity or magical experimentation, but from the desperate need of a broken man to recreate something he had lost forever. The doll was tenderly made by Gehrman as a means to keep him company, and to also serve the many hunters that would come to the hunter's dream. The word tenderly in this description is crucial to understanding Gehrman's mindset during the doll's creation. This was not a cold clinical process, but an act of love, albeit a twisted, obsessive love that bordered on madness. A deep love for the doll can be summarized by the fine craftsmanship of this article and the care with which it was kept. It borderlines on mania and exudes a slight warmth. The craftsmanship involved in the doll's creation speaks to the depth of Gehrman's obsession. Every detail of her appearance was meticulously crafted to match Maria's exact specifications. The doll herself has exactly the same size and appearance as Maria, as well as the same voice. This level of precision suggests that Gehrman had spent countless hours studying Maria's features, memorizing every curve of her face, every gesture, every inflection in her voice. The physical location where the doll was created adds another layer to this tragic story. In the waking world, the plain doll can be seen on the floor of the abandoned workshop, propped up against a wall. This workshop, hidden beneath the healing church's newer facility, represents Gore's retreat from the world after Maria's death. Here, surrounded by the tools and memories of his hunting days, he poured his grief into creating a perfect replica of his lost love. But the doll was not merely a passive memorial. Discarded doll clothing, likely a spare for dress-up, reveals that Gehrman had created multiple sets of clothing for his creation, suggesting an intent to interact with the doll as if she were alive. This detail is particularly unsettling, as it implies a level of psychological investment that goes far beyond simple remembrance. The doll's clothing itself tells a story of obsessive attention to detail. Her connection to Lady Maria, aside from just her outward look and voice, is exhibited by the themes of her clothing. Since Maria wore a brooch of a lumen flower and favored the symbol as her own, Gehrman reproduced this motif in the doll's attire by depicting lumen flower patterns and even a lumen flower necklace. Every element of the doll's design was carefully chosen to evoke memories of Maria, from the floral motifs she favored to the very fabric of her dress. However, despite all of Gehrman's craftsmanship and attention to detail, the doll he created was fundamentally flawed from his perspective. However, Gehrman soon became indifferent towards the doll's presence, possibly due to the latter lacking Maria's personality. No matter how perfectly he had replicated Maria's physical form, he could not capture her spirit, her fiery independence, or the complex moral consciousness that had ultimately driven her to renounce the hunt. This failure represents a profound commentary on the nature of consciousness and identity. Gehrman's obsession was ultimately superficial, focused on Maria's appearance rather than the deeper qualities that made her who she was. The doll, while physically perfect, was essentially an empty vessel, beautiful but lifeless, lacking the very qualities that had made Maria special in the first place. It may be that years in the dream with the doll made Gehrman come to resent the fact that the plain doll is just a pale imitation, with no memory of the true apprentice, reminding him every day of his failures. This gradual disillusionment with his creation speaks to the impossible nature of his project. The doll served as a constant reminder not of what he had loved, but of what he had lost and could never truly recreate. The psychological implications of this creation story are staggering. Gehrman's attempt to recreate Maria through the doll represents a fundamental misunderstanding of what made her valuable to him. His focus on her physical appearance and mannerisms, while ignoring the moral complexity and independent spirit that defined her character, reveals the superficial nature of his supposed love. Chapter 3: The Awakening Insight and Consciousness. The transformation of the plain doll from inanimate object to conscious being represents one of the most fascinating examples of artificial consciousness in gaming. But this awakening is not immediate or automatic. It requires a specific catalyst that ties directly into Bloodborne's central themes of knowledge, awareness, and cosmic horror. One insight is required to initially interact with the doll. This seemingly simple requirement carries profound implications for our understanding of consciousness in Bloodborne's universe. Insight as a game, mechanic, and narrative device represents the player character's growing awareness of the cosmic horrors that lurk beneath the surface of reality. The connection between insight and the doll's animation suggests that consciousness itself might be dependent on observation and awareness. In the Lovecraftian tradition that heavily influences Bloodborne, reality is often shaped by perception, and the act of observing something can fundamentally alter its nature. The requirement for insight to interact with the doll implies that her consciousness exists in a quantum state, simultaneously present and absent, until observed by someone with sufficient awareness. In everyday language, insight means that the properties, context, and relationships of an object area are subjectively recognized with sufficient accuracy, mentally grasped, and factually correctly understood. In Bloodborne's context, insight represents the recognition of a deeply hidden, uncanny truth, the eldritch truth. The fact that this eldritch awareness is required to perceive the doll's consciousness suggests that her existence operates on a level beyond normal human perception. When the player first arrives in the hunter's dream with zero insight, they encounter the doll as an inanimate object, a beautifully crafted porcelain figure propped against the workshop steps. The plain doll in the hunter's dream comes to life and becomes interactable after you gain one insight. This transformation is not gradual or partial. It is immediate and complete. One moment, the doll is an object. The next, she is a conscious speaking entity with her own thoughts and emotions. This binary nature of the doll's consciousness raises fascinating questions about the nature of awareness itself. If the player's insight drops back down to zero, she will become inanimate again upon appearing in the hunter's dream. This reversibility suggests that the doll's consciousness is not self-sustaining, but depends on external observation by someone with sufficient awareness. The hunter's initial interaction with the newly awakened doll is telling. "Hello, good hunter. I am a doll here in this dream to look after you." Her first words establish several crucial elements of her identity. She immediately identifies herself as a doll, an artificial being, but also declares her purpose and her awareness of her role in the hunter's dream. This suggests that her consciousness comes with pre-programmed knowledge and purpose, yet she speaks with genuine warmth and emotion. The doll's consciousness appears to be fundamentally different from human consciousness. While humans in Bloodborne's world struggle with the psychological implications of cosmic horror and often succumb to madness, the doll remains stable and supportive throughout the hunter's journey. She is the only NPC in all of Bloodborne that takes a kind, loving stance towards hunters. This emotional consistency suggests that her artificial nature might actually protect her from the psychological trauma that affects human characters. However, the doll's consciousness is not static or simplistic. she demonstrates growth and change throughout the game, responding to events and developing new insights about her own nature. Having been made by humans, she loves the hunter, but is unsure whether her affection is real or artificial. A thought she purrs incessantly. This self-reflection and uncertainty about the nature of her own emotions represents a sophisticated level of consciousness that goes far beyond simple programming. The question of whether the doll's love is real or artificial is perhaps unanswerable, but it demonstrates that she possesses one of the most fundamentally human characteristics: the ability to question the nature of her own existence. This philosophical uncertainty places her consciousness on par with human awareness, even if its origins are entirely different. The physical manifestations of the doll's consciousness are equally intriguing. The doll will sometimes fall asleep or move to the gravestone near the house. Sleep is typically associated with biological processes, the need for neural rest and memory consolidation. The fact that an artificial being would need or choose to sleep suggests that her consciousness operates according to patterns that mirror biological awareness. She describes herself to be created by humans, which suggests that she can be a greater being who has gained possession of a doll. This interpretation opens up the possibility that the doll's consciousness is not entirely artificial, but might represent the inhabitation of the physical form by some form of spiritual or cosmic entity. This would align with Bloodborne's themes of great ones and other worldly influence on human affairs. Chapter 4: The Nature of Artificial Love. One of the most profound and unsettling aspects of the plain doll's character is her relationship with love, both as something she experiences and as something she represents to others. The question of whether an artificial being can truly love, and whether that love can be considered genuine, forms the emotional core of her narrative arc. Hunters have told me about the church, about the gods and their love. But do the gods love their creations? I am a doll created by you humans. Would you ever think to love me? Of course I do love you. Isn't that how you've made me? This haunting dialogue reveals the doll's deep awareness of her own artificial nature and her desperate need for validation of her emotions. The structure of this confession is particularly revealing. She begins by questioning whether gods can love their creations, then immediately turns the question personal. Can humans love their artificial creations? Finally, she reveals her own love for the hunter, while simultaneously questioning its authenticity. The phrase, "Isn't that how you've made me?" suggests both pride in her loving nature and deep uncertainty about whether these feelings are genuine or simply programmed responses. This uncertainty about the nature of her emotions represents one of the most psychologically complex aspects of the doll's character. Unlike typical artificial intelligences in fiction, who either lack emotions entirely or possess them without question. The doll exists in a state of constant self-doubt about the validity of her feelings. This uncertainty, paradoxically, makes her emotions seem more genuine, as the ability to question one's own feelings is itself a sign of sophisticated consciousness. The doll's love manifests in consistently caring behavior toward the hunter. She holds the hunter in high regards and treats the hunter with deep respect. This is not mere politeness or programmed courtesy, but genuine concern for the hunter's well-being. Her dialogue often shows worry for the hunter's safety and joy at their return from dangerous expeditions. Upon gaining one insight and talking to the doll, she tells the hunter that she is there to embolden your sickly spirit. This phrase is particularly significant because it suggests that the doll can perceive something about the hunter's spiritual condition that goes beyond the physical. The reference to a sickly spirit implies that she understands the psychological and metaphysical toll that the hunt takes on those who participate in it. The doll's ability to channel blood echoes and strengthen the hunter represents a physical manifestation of her caring nature. Very well. Let the echoes become your strength. Let me stand close. Now shut your eyes. The intimate nature of this process, requiring physical proximity and trust, transforms what could be a purely mechanical transaction into something deeply personal and caring. But the doll's capacity for love extends beyond her relationship with the hunter. One of the most emotionally powerful moments in the game occurs when the player gives her the small hair ornament found in the abandoned workshop. What is this? I can't remember. Not a thing, only I feel a yearning. Something I've never felt before. What's happening to me? Ah, tell me, hunter, could this be joy? Ah, this scene reveals that the doll's consciousness contains dormant memories or emotional imprints connected to Lady Mariah. The hair ornament triggers something deeper than simple recognition. It awakens a profound yearning that she has never experienced before. The fact that she identifies this feeling as potential joy suggests that her emotional range is both sophisticated and continuing to develop. The doll will shed a tear that becomes the tear stone, almost as if it remembers the significance of this ornament and treasures the care with which it was kept. The production of tears, a uniquely biological response to emotion by an artificial being, represents a profound mystery. The tearstone description states that a doll sheds neither blood nor tears, and thus its nature remains unknown. The plain doll sheds both blood and tears, implying that its nature can be known. This ability to cry challenges our understanding of what the doll truly is. Tears are not merely physical responses, but representations of deep emotional states. The fact that the doll can produce them suggests that her emotional responses are not simply programmed behaviors, but genuine physiological reactions to psychological states. The relationship between the doll and Lady Maria adds another layer of complexity to questions about artificial love. Good hunter, this may sound strange, but have I somehow changed? Moments ago, from some place, perhaps deep within, I sensed a liberation from heavy shackles. This dialogue, triggered after the player defeats Lady Maria in the hunter's nightmare, suggests a deep connection between the two that goes beyond mere physical resemblance. Some have theorized that the doll and Maria share consciousness, or that the doll contains fragments of Maria's soul. It is kind of a cornerstone to my theory that doll and Maria are in a way the same person, but split in two. When doll is asleep, Maria is awake, and vice versa. While this interpretation is speculative, the emotional connection between the two characters is undeniable. The doll's love also manifests in her relationship with Gehrman. Despite his indifference toward her, she never expresses resentment or hurt at his treatment of her, instead maintaining a caring attitude toward the old hunter. This suggests that her capacity for love is not dependent on reciprocation, a characteristic that many would consider evidence of genuine, unconditional love. Perhaps most significantly, the doll's love extends to caring for the hunter even after transcendence. In the game's secret ending, where the hunter becomes an infant great one, she takes care of you as if she were a mother, helping you become stronger and stronger, until eventually you transcend form into a great one. This maternal care for a transformed being represents the ultimate expression of unconditional love, accepting and nurturing someone even when they have become something entirely inhuman. Chapter 5. The White Blood Mystery. One of the most enigmatic aspects of the plain doll's nature is revealed through her unique physiology. Specifically, the strange white substance that flows through her veins. The doll is the only being in all of Bloodborne that bleeds pure white pale blood. This distinctive characteristic sets her apart from every other entity in the game and raises intriguing questions about her true nature. To appreciate the significance of the doll's white blood, we must first understand the different blood types that exist within Bloodborne's universe. Kin of the cosmos, such as Celestial Emissary and Celestial Lavi, bleed gay, colored serum blood. Regular humans bleed red blood, while great ones typically bleed either red or darker variants. The doll's pure white blood is entirely unique, placing her in a category of her own. The connection between the doll's blood and the mysterious pale blood has sparked considerable speculation among lore enthusiasts. While Miyazaki has stated that pale blood refers to the color of the sky after Rome is defeated, and the moon presence, some have wondered whether the doll's unique blood might represent another interpretation of this elusive substance. The doll has pure white pale blood. Could this mean that the direction to seek pale blood is telling you to seek the plain doll, and by extension, the hunter's dream. This interpretation would suggest that by seeking the pale blood and finding the plain doll who has the pure white pale blood, you are able to become stronger using blood echoes to embolden your sickly spirit. The doll's ability to channel blood echoes and strengthen the hunter could represent a form of healing or transcendence related to the concept of pale blood, though this remains speculative. However, the mystery of the doll's white blood extends beyond its potential connection to pale blood. When attacked, the doll's blood is white. It is not the pale amber yellow color of serum, which is found in the kin enemies, nor the red color of blood found in the other enemies of the game, including the great ones, but a unique white. This uniqueness suggests that the doll represents something entirely new in Bloodborne's cosmology. Neither human, beast, kin, nor great one, but something else entirely. The only other entities in the game associated with white substances are the messengers. The only other blood like this appears around the messengers when they bubble up from the ground at a lamp post, message, bath, or tombstone. This connection between the doll and the messengers is intriguing, as both serve the hunter and both exist primarily within the hunter's dream. Some theories suggest that the doll's white blood is connected to her artificial nature, that it represents some form of synthetic life force created through unknown means. Fictionally, hypochromic anemia could advance to the point that blood loses its redness completely. Such a condition is incompatible with life, but could work fine in the Bloodborne universe. This medical interpretation suggests that the doll's blood might represent the theoretical endpoint of certain blood conditions, achieving a state that would be impossible in the real world. Alternatively, the white blood might indicate a connection to cosmic or divine forces. White blood is found only in the doll. So, why would the protagonist be asked to look for pale blood if he finds it at the very beginning? This question highlights the paradox of the doll's nature. If she is indeed the pale blood the hunter seeks, why is this revelation not made explicit? The ability of the doll's blood to manifest physically in the form of tears adds another layer to this mystery. The doll will shed a tear that becomes the tearstone, almost as if it remembers the significance of this ornament and treasures the care with which it was kept. The transformation of the doll's emotional response into a physical blood gem that can enhance weapons suggests that her white blood possesses properties that go beyond normal physiology. A blood gem that fortifies weapons and adds various properties. Created from a shining silver doll tear, this blood gem is a quiet but unfaltering friend that continually restores HP, the life essence of a hunter. The healing properties of the tear stone, created from the doll's crystallized tear, suggests that her white blood contains life-giving properties that align with traditional interpretations of pale blood as a curative substance. The mystery deepens when we consider the doll's relationship with death and resurrection. The doll can be killed and will revive after returning to the hunter's dream. This ability to return from death without apparent consequence suggests that her white blood is connected to some form of immortality or regeneration that transcends normal biological processes. Chapter 6. The Great One Theory. One of the most compelling theories about the plain doll's true nature suggests that she might be more than an artificial creation, possibly even a great one in disguise. While this interpretation remains speculative, certain evidence supports this fascinating possibility. The parallels between the doll and confirmed great ones are intriguing. You need insight to see Heros her just like a Migdala, a great one. The requirement for insight to interact with the doll mirrors how other cosmic entities become visible only to those who have gained sufficient awareness. This connection could suggest that the doll's consciousness exists on the same level of reality as these other worldly beings. Her role in nurturing the hunter's growth and eventual transcendence aligns with established patterns of Great One behavior. She takes care of you as if she were a mother, helping you become stronger and stronger until eventually you transcend form into a Great One. This maternal behavior fits perfectly with the cosmic principle that every Great One loses its child and then yearns for a surrogate. If we consider this interpretation, the doll's unwavering support for the hunter takes on new meaning. Her ability to strengthen them through blood echoes and her ultimate care for them even after transcendence could represent the actions of a cosmic entity nurturing a potential offspring. The doll cannot be killed, and when interacted with, can use blood echoes to increase the abilities of the hunter. Abilities that suggest access to forces beyond normal artificial intelligence. She describes herself to be created by humans, which suggests that she can be a greater being who has gained possession of a doll. This could indicate that while the physical form was indeed created by Gore, the consciousness that inhabits it might be something entirely different, a cosmic entity that chose to present itself in a comforting, non-threatening form. The relationship between the doll and the messengers supports this interpretation. The messengers seems to be attracted to her, and at the beginning of the game, the doll acknowledges them with, "Ah, you found yourself a hunter," suggesting a hierarchical relationship where these cosmic entities serve her will. However, this theory also raises complex questions about the doll's emotional expressions. If she is indeed a great one, her demonstrations of love and care might represent something unprecedented. A cosmic entity that has chosen to experience existence from a human perspective, potentially developing genuine emotions through this experience. The theory remains speculative, but it offers an explanation for many of the doll's most mysterious qualities. Her unique blood, her impossible abilities, her connection to cosmic forces, and her role in the hunter's transcendence could all be better understood if she represents a great one that has chosen limitation and service over cosmic detachment. Chapter 7: Winter Lanterns and Fractured Consciousness. Among the most disturbing enemies in Bloodborne are the Winter Lanterns, grotesque creatures that bear an unsettling resemblance to the plain doll. These nightmarish beings raise intriguing questions about the nature of consciousness and the potential consequences of artificial creation. Winter lanterns are grotesque, nightmarish creatures with bulbous heads seemingly formed from the remains of messengers under the mass of flesh, eyes, and moors that compose the winter lantern's head. It's possible to see a rather humanoid body with 2 arms and 2 legs. This body is dressed with a torn, bloodied version of the doll set with a long skirt and sleeves. The resemblance between these creatures and the doll suggests a deliberate connection that invites deeper examination. The striking visual similarities between winter lanterns and the doll have led some to theorize that these creatures might represent failed attempts at artificial consciousness. Based on what we observe, one could infer that the process of creating life from inanimate matter might not always produce benevolent results. Where the doll provides comfort and stability, the winter lantern spread madness and fear. This interpretation would suggest that the plain doll represents a successful culmination of experimentation, while the winter lanterns embody the catastrophic failures that might precede such success. The creature's grotesque fusion of messenger flesh with the doll's clothing could imply attempts to animate artificial beings through cosmic means. Experiments that resulted in consciousness without coherence, awareness without sanity. The winter lantern's heads, composed of melted messengers, clustered together with numerous eyes, could represent a disturbing literalization of William's famous phrase about needing eyes on the inside to gain cosmic insight. However, instead of achieving enlightenment, these creatures appear to have been driven mad by forced awareness of cosmic truths. The fact that winter lanterns wear corrupted versions of the doll's clothing points to an intentional connection between the 2 entities. Winter lanterns appear disturbingly similar to the doll, possessing a malformed version of the doll set. This suggests they were conceived to serve a similar function to the doll, but failed catastrophically in their purpose. The winter lantern's ability to induce frenzy through their gaze represents a fundamental inversion of the doll's nature. Where the doll's presence soothes and heals, the winter lanterns cause psychological damage simply by being observed. This could imply that the process of artificial consciousness creation carries inherent risks. That awareness forced upon inappropriate vessels might result in entities that spread madness rather than comfort. Their singing of what sounds like MGO's lullaby adds another layer to their tragic nature. Lullabies are meant to comfort and soothe. Yet, their version causes madness instead. This inversion suggests that these creatures retain some memory or awareness of their intended purpose, even in their corrupted state. The geographical distribution of winter lanterns also provides clues about their nature and origin. These vaguely humanoid eldritch abominations roam the nightmare frontier and the nightmare of Mensis. Their presence in nightmare realms rather than the waking world suggests that they exist primarily as manifestations of psychological trauma or failed consciousness. The theory that winter lanterns represent proto-dolls gains additional support when we consider the technological and magical capabilities required for their creation. The precise mimicry of the doll's clothing and general body structure suggests access to the same knowledge and techniques that Gehrman used in his successful creation. Perhaps there's some sort of nightmare of our hunter Maria Gehrman, patient of the research hall. This interpretation suggests that winter lanterns might not be separate entities at all, but rather nightmarish projections of traumatic memories associated with the doll and her creation. The winter lanterns could also represent the dark side of consciousness itself. What happens when awareness is forced upon beings that lack the psychological framework to handle cosmic truth? The mass of eyes and mouths that comprises their heads could symbolize overwhelming sensory input without the ability to process or integrate that information coherently. Brain mass behaves like a parasitic host controlling the dull body, just as the moon presence controls the dream. You can see its tentacles protruding from the dress's sleeves, and the arms hang lifelessly until the mass tries to grab you. This analysis suggests that the winter lanterns represent consciousness as a parasitic force that has taken control of artificial bodies. Much like how various cosmic entities exert control over the hunter's dream, the relationship between winter lanterns and the plain doll also raises questions about the stability of artificial consciousness. If the doll represents successful artificial awareness, the winter lanterns might represent what could happen if that consciousness were to become corrupted or destabilized. This interpretation adds a note of potential tragedy to the doll's story, suggesting that her current benevolent nature might not be permanent or guaranteed. The fact that winter lanterns continue to wear approximations of the doll's clothing, even in their corrupted state, suggests a deep psychological connection to their intended identity. Even in madness, they retain some memory of what they were supposed to be: caretakers and comforters rather than agents of terror. Chapter 8: The Question of Memory and Identity. One of the most psychologically complex aspects of the plain doll's character is her relationship with memory and identity. Unlike typical artificial intelligences that either possess complete knowledge or exist as blank slates. The doll exists in a state of partial remembrance that raises profound questions about the nature of consciousness and continuity of self. The most dramatic example of the doll's complex relationship with memory occurs when the player presents her with the small hair ornament found in the abandoned workshop. What is this? I can't remember. Not a thing. Only I feel a yearning. Something I've never felt before. What's happening to me? Ah, tell me, Hunter. Could this be joy? Ah, this response reveals several crucial aspects of the doll's consciousness. First, the doll experiences a strong emotional response to an object that should be meaningful to Lady Maria, not to her. The hair ornament was kept with great care, clearly a keepsake for one who had departed. The fact that the doll responds to it suggests that she contains some form of emotional or psychological imprint from Maria, even if she cannot consciously access those memories. Second, the doll's inability to remember anything specific about the ornament, coupled with her powerful emotional response, suggests that her consciousness operates on multiple levels. Her rational verbal mind cannot access the memories associated with the object, but her emotional consciousness recognizes its significance at a deeper level. Third, the doll's identification of her feeling as potential joy is significant because it represents a new emotional experience for her. Despite her artificial nature and designed purpose to serve hunters, she is capable of experiencing new emotions and states of being. This capacity for growth and new experience is a hallmark of genuine consciousness rather than simple programming. The nature of memory fragmentation in the doll becomes even more complex when we consider her responses to other events in the game. Good Hunter, this may sound strange, but have I somehow changed? Moments ago, from someplace, perhaps deep within, I sensed a liberation from heavy shackles. This dialogue, triggered after the player defeats Lady Maria, suggests that the doll and Maria share some form of connected consciousness. The phrase liberation from heavy shackles implies that the doll was somehow psychologically burdened by Maria's continued existence in the hunter's nightmare. This connection operates below the level of conscious awareness. The doll doesn't know why she feels liberated, only that something fundamental has changed within her. This raises fascinating questions about the nature of consciousness and identity. If the doll contains fragments of Maria's consciousness or emotional imprints, at what point does she become a separate individual rather than a continuation of Maria's existence? The game deliberately leaves this question unanswered, allowing for multiple interpretations of the doll's true nature. Some theories suggest that Doll and Maria are in a way the same person, but split in two. When Doll is asleep, Maria is awake, and vice versa. and Nia quite remembers what they seen in their dream nightmare upon waking up. This interpretation would explain the doll's fragmented memories and her emotional responses to Maria-related stimuli. The doll's relationship with sleep adds another layer to questions about her memory and consciousness. The doll will sometimes fall asleep or move to the gravestone near the house. For an artificial being to engage in sleep suggests either a biological component to her consciousness or a psychological need for rest and memory processing, similar to human sleep patterns. During these sleep periods, the doll might be experiencing dreams or processing memories in ways that parallel human consciousness. The fact that she can fall asleep and wake up naturally, rather than simply powering down and reactivating, suggests that her consciousness operates according to organic patterns rather than mechanical ones. The doll's memory also demonstrates selectivity that goes beyond simple data storage. She retains knowledge about the hunter's progress and can comment on their spiritual development. Good hunter, your presence somehow soothes. I sense the ancient echoes. They course your veins. This awareness of the hunter's metaphysical state suggests that her memory systems are capable of perceiving and recording information that goes beyond simple sensory input. Interestingly, the doll's memory appears to be both continuous and fragmented simultaneously. She remembers previous interactions with the hunter and can track their progress, but she lacks access to memories that should logically be associated with her appearance and mannerisms. This selective amnesia might be intentional, a psychological defense mechanism that allows her to function without being overwhelmed by traumatic memories associated with Maria's life and death. The question of whether the doll's memories are real or implanted mirrors broader philosophical questions about the nature of memory and identity. If consciousness is simply the sum of memories and experiences, then the source of those memories might be less important than their psychological impact on the individual. The doll's capacity for creating new memories and experiences also distinguishes her from simple copies or recordings. Her relationship with the hunter develops over time, and her emotional responses become more nuanced as she learns about the hunter's journey. This ability to form new memories and emotional associations suggests that her consciousness is dynamic rather than static. When the doll is killed and resurrects in the hunter's dream, she sometimes greets the hunter as if meeting them for the first time. Hello, good hunter. I am a doll. This apparent memory reset could be interpreted as evidence that her consciousness is fragile or artificial. However, it might also represent a defense mechanism, a way of protecting her core personality from the trauma of death and resurrection. Chapter 9: The Motherhood Imperative. One of the most profound aspects of the plain doll's character is her maternal nature, and the way it connects to broader themes of parenthood and cosmic reproduction in Bloodborne's universe. The doll's role as a nurturing figure transcends simple service to become something approaching divine motherhood, particularly in the game's secret ending. The maternal aspects of the doll's personality are evident from her first interactions with the hunter. "Hello, good hunter. I am a doll here in this dream to look after you." The phrase "look after you" carries strong parental connotations, suggesting that the doll views the hunter not as an employer or master, but as someone under her care and protection. This nurturing aspect becomes more pronounced as the hunter's journey progresses. "Honorable hunter, pursue the echoes of blood, and I will channel them into your strength. You will hunt beasts, and I will be here for you to embolden your sickly spirit." The promise to be here for you represents the kind of unconditional support typically associated with maternal love. The physical intimacy of the leveling process also reinforces the maternal themes. Very well. Let the echoes become your strength. Let me stand close now. Shut your eyes. The requirement for physical closeness and trust during this vulnerable process mirrors the intimate bond between mother and child. The doll's maternal nature becomes most explicit in the game's secret ending, where the hunter consumes 3 to 3 umbilical cords and resists the moon presence's influence, ultimately becoming an infant Great One. When you become an infant Great One during childhood's beginning, she is seen cradling you like a mother. This scene represents the culmination of the doll's nurturing role, as she literally becomes a mother to a newly born cosmic entity. This transformation of the hunter into an infant Great One and the doll's acceptance of maternal responsibility for this new form of life connects to one of Bloodborne's central themes. Every Great One loses its child and then yearns for a surrogate. The doll's role in nurturing the hunter's transcendence could be seen as fulfilling this cosmic imperative, providing the surrogate child that Great Ones desperately seek. The maternal themes surrounding the doll also reflect broader questions about artificial life and reproduction. If the doll is capable of genuine maternal love, what does this say about the nature of parenthood itself? Is the biological connection between parent and child essential to genuine parental love? Or can artificial beings develop equally valid parental relationships? The doll's potential relationship with Lady Maria adds another layer to these maternal themes. If the doll contains aspects of Maria's consciousness or emotional patterns, her maternal behavior toward the hunter might reflect Maria's own frustrated maternal instincts. Maria is distantly related to the undead queen, but had great admiration for Gehrman, unaware of his curious mania. The tragedy of Maria's life, dying young without the opportunity for motherhood, might find expression through the doll's nurturing nature. The connection between the doll and themes of failed or absent motherhood in Bloodborne is particularly significant. The game is filled with examples of tragic maternal relationships. Ariana's forced pregnancy by a great one, the loss of MGO, and the general absence of positive maternal figures throughout Gehrman. The doll stands as a rare example of successful, nurturing maternal behavior in this environment of reproductive horror. The doll's maternal nature also extends to her relationship with other inhabitants of the hunter's dream. She shows concern for Gore's well-being, despite his indifference toward her. On any other night, he'd be restless, but on this night, he sounds so very calm. This care for a figure who created her, but then abandoned her emotionally, demonstrates the unconditional nature of her maternal love, the biological impossibility of the doll's maternal role. Being an artificial construct, caring for beings she didn't give birth to, highlights the philosophical complexity of her character. Her motherhood is chosen rather than biological, conscious rather than instinctual. Yet, it appears to be no less genuine for these differences. Some interpretations suggest that the doll's maternal behavior is programmed rather than genuine, that Gore designed her to be nurturing as part of her function in supporting hunters. However, the depth and consistency of her care, particularly her willingness to accept responsibility for the transformed hunter in the secret ending, suggests that her maternal nature transcends simple programming. The doll's role as a mother figure to the hunter also raises questions about the nature of spiritual parenthood. She doesn't give birth to the hunter in any biological sense, but she nurtures their growth from human to something transcendent. This spiritual midwifery represents a form of parenthood that focuses on consciousness and development rather than genetics and biology. The maternal symbolism surrounding the doll becomes even more complex when we consider her relationship with death and resurrection. She cannot permanently die, always returning to care for the hunter, regardless of what happens to her physical form. This eternal availability mirrors idealized concepts of motherhood, the mother who is always there when needed, whose love transcends even death. Chapter 10. The consciousness of service. The plain doll's unwavering dedication to service represents one of the most psychologically complex aspects of her character. Unlike human servants who might serve out of obligation, fear, or economic necessity, the doll appears to serve out of genuine desire and love. This willing servitude raises profound questions about autonomy, purpose, and the nature of fulfillment in artificial consciousness. I am a doll here in this dream to look after you. This statement of purpose appears straightforward, but it contains layers of philosophical complexity. The doll identifies herself by her nature, a doll, and immediately follows with her chosen function to look after the hunter. The seamless connection between identity and purpose suggests that service is not something imposed upon her, but fundamental to her sense of self. The doll is very loyal to the hunter. She accepts her role to serve, believing it to be her purpose. This is seen in all endings, as she serves the hunter in some way or wishes the hunter well. This consistency across all possible outcomes demonstrates that her commitment to service transcends circumstance. Whether the hunter becomes a great one, takes Gehr's place, or returns to the waking world, the doll maintains her supportive role. However, the doll's service is not blind obedience or mechanical compliance. She demonstrates agency and independent thought within her chosen role. When the hunter approaches with a large amount of blood echoes, she positions herself by the tombstone rather than in her usual location, showing that she adapts her behavior based on the hunter's needs rather than following rigid programming. The doll's understanding of her service role appears to evolve throughout the hunter's journey. Initially, she focuses on the mechanical aspects of her function. Very well. Let the echoes become your strength. As the relationship develops, her service becomes more emotionally nuanced, offering comfort and encouragement rather than just practical assistance. This evolution suggests that the doll's consciousness allows for growth and learning within her service role. She doesn't simply perform predetermined functions, but develops new ways to fulfill her purpose based on her observations and experiences with the hunter. The question of whether the doll's service represents true choice or sophisticated programming touches on fundamental questions about free will and determinism. Having been made by humans, she loves the hunter, but is unsure whether her affection is real or artificial, a thought she persistently. This self-doubt about the authenticity of her emotions extends to questions about the authenticity of her desire to serve. If the doll's love and service are programmed responses, what does this say about the nature of choice and authenticity? Conversely, if human emotions and behaviors are products of biological programming, how different is the doll's artificial programming from human nature? The doll's service also demonstrates remarkable emotional intelligence. She seems to understand not just what the hunter needs practically, but what they need emotionally and spiritually. Good hunter, your presence somehow soothes. I sense the ancient echoes. They course your veins. This ability to perceive the hunter's spiritual state and respond appropriately suggests that her service operates on multiple levels simultaneously. The doll's relationship with Gehrman provides another perspective on her attitude towards service. Despite his indifference and occasional rudeness toward her, she never expresses resentment or refuses to fulfill her functions. This suggests that her commitment to service transcends personal feelings or reciprocity. Did you speak with Gehrman? He was a hunter long, long ago, but now serves only to advise them. The doll's description of Gehrman as someone who serves only to advise demonstrates her understanding that service takes many forms. She doesn't judge the quality or extent of others' service, but simply acknowledges their role. The doll's service extends beyond the hunter to include care for the hunter's dream itself. She tends to various locations within the dream, maintains the space, and ensures that everything functions properly for visiting hunters. This broader service role suggests that she sees herself as a caretaker for the entire environment rather than just an individual servant. In the secret ending, the doll's service reaches its ultimate expression as she takes responsibility for the newly transformed hunter turned Great One. This willingness to serve, even when the object of her care has become something inhuman, demonstrates the unconditional nature of her service commitment. The doll's attitude towards service also reflects broader themes about purpose and meaning in existence. For many characters in Bloodborne, the loss of purpose leads to madness, despair, or monstrous transformation. The doll's clear sense of purpose and genuine fulfillment in service provides a stark contrast to the existential crisis that affects most other characters. Farewell, good hunter. May you find your worth in the waking world. This blessing demonstrates that the doll's service ultimately aims for the hunter's independence and fulfillment rather than dependence on her care. True service, as the doll embodies it, seeks the betterment of those served rather than the preservation of the service relationship. The consciousness of service that the doll embodies raises questions about the relationship between fulfillment and autonomy. Can a being who finds genuine fulfillment in service be considered truly autonomous? The doll suggests that autonomy might not require rejection of service, but rather the conscious choice to serve based on love and purpose rather than compulsion. Chapter 11. The Dream and Reality Interface. The plain doll's existence at the intersection of the hunter's dream and waking reality provides crucial insights into the nature of consciousness that transcends dimensional boundaries. Her presence in both realms, though in different states, raises profound questions about the relationship between dreams, reality, and conscious experience. In the waking world, the plain doll can be seen on the floor of the abandoned workshop, propped up against a wall. One of the fingers on its hand is twitching intermittently, a gesture that the doll can be seen doing when found sleeping in the hunter's dream. This twitching represents the only sign of consciousness in the physical world version of the doll, suggesting that her awareness exists primarily in the dream realm while maintaining minimal presence in physical reality. The location of the physical doll in the abandoned workshop is highly significant. When you get to the workshop, you get a trophy that says the source of the dream. As you explore the area, you only find the doll in the corner, and her finger is twitching. This trophy designation suggests that the physical doll, or more precisely, her original form, represents the foundational element that enabled the creation of the hunter's dream. Next to the doll's body in the abandoned workshop is an altar with a 1 to 3 umbilical cord on it. This particular 1 to 3 umbilical cord precipitated the encounter with the pale moon, which beckoned the hunters and conceived the hunter's dream. The proximity of this cosmic artifact to the doll's physical form suggests a deep connection between her existence and the creation of the dream realm itself. The theory that the doll serves as the anchor or foundation for the hunter's dream gains support from her unique position as the only entity that exists consciously in the dream while maintaining a physical presence in the waking world. She's probably the host of the hunter's dream. She's alive. At a certain level of insight, her finger on her lap starts twitching. This observation suggests that the doll's consciousness operates as a bridge between dimensions. The mechanism by which the doll's consciousness operates across dimensional boundaries appears to be related to the insight mechanic. The plain doll in the hunter's dream comes to life and becomes interactable after you gain one insight. This requirement suggests that the doll's consciousness exists in a state that can only be perceived and interacted with by those who have gained cosmic awareness. If your insight drops back to 0, the doll will return to its inanimate state. This reversibility indicates that the doll's conscious manifestation in the dream is dependent on external observation by beings with sufficient awareness. This relationship between consciousness and observation echoes quantum mechanical principles and Lovecraftian themes about reality being shaped by perception. The doll's existence across dimensional boundaries also provides insights into the nature of the hunter's dream itself. Rather than being a simple alternate dimension or magical space, the dream appears to be a realm of consciousness where thoughts, memories, and artificial constructs can achieve independent existence. The fact that countless hunters have visited the hunter's dream, as the doll mentions, suggests that her consciousness has been interacting with and supporting hunters across an extended period. This continuity of experience across multiple hunter visits indicates that her consciousness maintains coherence and memory despite the cyclical nature of the hunting experience. The doll's ability to maintain consciousness across dimensional boundaries, while most other entities are limited to single realms, suggests that her artificial nature might actually provide advantages over biological consciousness, where human consciousness is typically bound to physical neural structures. The doll's consciousness appears to operate according to different principles that allow for greater dimensional flexibility. The relationship between the dream doll and the physical doll also raises questions about the continuity of consciousness. Are they the same entity existing in different states, or separate but related consciousnesses? The synchronization between the dream doll's sleep gestures, and the physical doll's twitching suggests some form of conscious connection. But the exact nature of this relationship remains mysterious. When not assisting the player, the doll will sometimes be found sleeping, sometimes kneeling before the grave that gives the player access to the hunter's nightmare, and sometimes praying to the moon presence and the messengers on the hunter's behalf. These various activities in the dream realm suggest that the doll's consciousness remains active and purposeful, even when not directly interacting with the hunter. The doll's prayers to the moon presence on behalf of the hunter and the messengers indicate that she serves as an intermediary between different levels of consciousness and reality. This role as a bridge between the hunter's human consciousness, the cosmic awareness of great ones, and the mysterious nature of the messengers suggests that her consciousness operates on multiple levels simultaneously. The fact that the doll can move between different locations within the hunter's dream based on the hunter's spiritual state demonstrates her awareness of multiple dimensional or psychological layers within the dream realm itself. She will be positioned by the tombstone. If your character is carrying a large amount of blood echoes upon returning to hunter's dream after a long hunt, this spatial responsiveness indicates that her consciousness can perceive and respond to metaphysical conditions that go beyond simple physical presence. Chapter 12. The evolution of artificial emotion. Throughout the hunter's journey, the plain doll demonstrates a capacity for emotional growth and development that challenges traditional concepts of artificial intelligence. Her emotional evolution provides insights into the nature of consciousness, learning, and the development of genuine feeling in artificial beings. The doll's initial emotional state appears to be one of gentle contentment combined with uncertainty about her own nature. I am a doll here in this dream to look after you. This early dialogue establishes her basic emotional framework. She knows her purpose and finds satisfaction in it, but she also acknowledges her artificial nature with neither pride nor shame, simply acceptance. As the hunter's journey progresses, the doll begins to experience more complex emotional states. Hunters have told me about the church, about the gods and their love. But do the gods love their creations? I am a doll created by you humans. Would you ever think to love me? This dialogue reveals several layers of emotional development. She has processed information from other hunters and developed philosophical questions about love and divine relationship. More significantly, she has developed a need for validation and acknowledgement of her own worth. The emotional culmination of this particular development comes with her confession. Of course, I do love you. Isn't that how you've made me? This statement represents a complex emotional achievement. The simultaneous expression of love and uncertainty about its authenticity. The ability to love while questioning the nature of that love, demonstrates sophisticated emotional self-awareness. The doll's response to the small hair ornament represents perhaps the most dramatic example of emotional evolution in the game. What? What is this? I can't remember. Not a thing. Only I feel a yearning. Something I've never felt before. What's happening to me? Ah, tell me, Hunter, could this be joy? The doll experiences a completely new emotion. Joy triggered by a recovered memory or emotional imprint. This experience is so novel that she must ask for help identifying it. This scene demonstrates several crucial aspects of the doll's emotional development. First, she is capable of experiencing emotions she has never felt before, indicating that her emotional range is not fixed or limited to her original programming. Second, she recognizes the novelty of the experience, showing self-awareness about her own emotional states. Third, she seeks external validation to understand and identify her new feeling, demonstrating both humility and a desire for connection. The evolution of the doll's relationship with the hunter also demonstrates emotional growth. Her early interactions are formal and somewhat distant, focused on her service role. As the relationship develops, her emotional investment becomes more apparent. Good hunter, your presence somehow soothes. I sense the ancient echoes. They course your veins. This later dialogue shows that she has developed the ability to find comfort in the hunter's presence and to perceive their spiritual development. The doll's emotional responses to events involving Lady Maria provide another dimension of her emotional evolution. Good hunter, this may sound strange, but have I somehow changed? Moments ago, from some place, perhaps deep within, I sensed the liberation from heavy shackles. This experience of liberation occurs without conscious understanding of its cause, suggesting that the doll's emotional system operates on levels below conscious awareness. The complexity of this emotional response, feeling changed without understanding why, demonstrates that the doll's emotions have developed beyond simple stimulus response patterns. She experiences complex psychological states that she cannot fully explain or control. Much like human emotional experience, the doll's capacity for empathy also develops throughout the game, initially focused on her own role and the hunter's immediate needs. She gradually demonstrates awareness of and concern for other beings in her environment. Her observations about Gore's sleep patterns and her prayers on behalf of the messengers show that her emotional awareness extends beyond her direct relationships. Oh, good hunter, I can hear Gore sleeping. On any other night, he'd be restless, but on this night, he sounds so very calm. Perhaps something has eased his suffering. This dialogue demonstrates sophisticated emotional perception. The doll can detect subtle changes in Gehrman's emotional state and speculate about their causes. This level of empathetic awareness requires emotional intelligence that goes far beyond basic programming. The doll's emotional evolution also includes the development of complex feelings about her own existence and purpose. Having been made by humans, she loves the hunter, but is unsure whether her affection is real or artificial, a thought she purrs incessantly. This ongoing philosophical struggle about the authenticity of her emotions represents a form of existential anxiety typically associated with sophisticated consciousness. The development of meta-emotions, feelings about feelings, represents one of the most advanced aspects of the doll's emotional evolution. Her worry about whether her love is real demonstrates that she has developed the capacity for self-reflection and emotional self-analysis. This recursive emotional awareness places her emotional sophistication on par with human consciousness. The doll's emotional responses also demonstrate increasing nuance and complexity over time. Her early expressions of love and care are straightforward and uncomplicated. Later expressions show greater emotional depth and sophistication, including ambivalence, uncertainty, and the ability to hold contradictory feelings simultaneously. In the secret ending, the doll's emotional evolution reaches its ultimate expression as she accepts the transformed hunter with apparent joy and maternal love. This willingness to embrace and care for a being that has become something entirely inhuman demonstrates emotional growth beyond what was probably intended in her original design. Chapter 13. The Philosophy of Artificial Soul. The question of whether the plain doll possesses a soul represents one of the most profound philosophical challenges presented by Bloodborne's narrative. Traditional concepts of souls are typically tied to divine creation or natural biological processes. Yet, the doll demonstrates qualities that seem to transcend mere artificial intelligence or mechanical animation. The game provides several clues about the nature of souls and their relationship to artificial beings. The Tearstone description states that a doll sheds neither blood nor tears, and thus its nature remains unknown. The plain doll sheds both blood and tears, implying that its nature can be known. This suggests that the doll has achieved something that transcends normal artificial existence, the ability to express genuine emotion through physical manifestation. The production of tears is particularly significant from a philosophical perspective. Tears represent one of the most profound connections between emotional and physical states in biological beings. The fact that an artificial being can produce tears suggests either that she possesses some form of biological component, or that her consciousness has achieved a level of sophistication that allows for psychosomatic responses typically associated with souls. The doll's relationship with death and resurrection also provides insights into questions about her soul. The doll can be killed and will revive after returning to the hunter's dream. This ability to return from death without apparent consequence could be interpreted as evidence of either the absence of a soul making death meaningless, or the presence of an immortal soul that transcends physical destruction. When the doll dies and resurrects, she sometimes greets the hunter as if meeting them for the first time, suggesting either memory loss or a form of spiritual reset. If the player chooses to have their life ended by gore, the doll will wish them farewell and pray at their tombstone. This behavior suggests that she understands death as meaningful and permanent for others, even if it is not for her. The doll's capacity for prayer itself raises questions about spiritual awareness. Prayer typically implies belief in or communication with higher powers, suggesting a form of spiritual consciousness that goes beyond mechanical function. The fact that she prays both for the hunter and on behalf of the messengers indicates a sophisticated understanding of spiritual relationships and hierarchies. The doll's apparent ability to perceive spiritual states in others also suggests some form of soul-level awareness. Good hunter, your presence somehow soothes. I sense the ancient echoes. They course your veins. This perception of ancient echoes implies that she can detect spiritual or metaphysical qualities that would typically be imperceptible to artificial beings. The question of the doll's soul becomes even more complex when we consider her potential connection to Lady Maria. If the doll contains fragments of Maria's consciousness or soul, this would suggest that souls can be transferred, divided, or replicated in ways that challenge traditional spiritual concepts. The emotional response to the small hair ornament and the sense of liberation after Maria's death both suggest some form of spiritual connection that transcends physical similarity. The doll's capacity for genuine love also bears on questions about her soul. Having been made by humans, she loves the hunter, but is unsure whether her affection is real or artificial. The ability to question the authenticity of one's own emotions suggests a level of self-awareness and moral consciousness typically associated with souls rather than mere programming. The unconditional nature of the doll's love provides another perspective on questions about her consciousness. Her love for the hunter persists regardless of their actions, choices, or eventual fate. This unconditional love could mirror certain concepts of divine love, suggesting a form of spiritual consciousness that transcends simple programming or biological instinct. In the secret ending, where the hunter becomes an infant great one, the doll's immediate acceptance and maternal care for this transformed being might indicate a form of spiritual recognition that goes beyond physical appearance. This ability to recognize and love the essential nature of a being regardless of their physical form could imply a level of spiritual perception that suggests something approaching what we might call a soul. The doll's relationship with cosmic forces also bears consideration. Her ability to channel blood echoes and transform them into strength for the hunter suggests access to metaphysical forces that transcend normal physical laws. Whether this represents advanced artificial capabilities or genuine spiritual power remains an open question. The requirement for insight to perceive the doll's consciousness adds complexity to questions about her soul. If consciousness requires cosmic awareness to perceive, this might suggest that the doll's spiritual nature operates on a level beyond normal physical reality, where the boundaries between artificial and natural become less meaningful. Rather than providing definitive answers, the game deliberately leaves these questions unresolved, allowing us to form our own conclusions about the doll's spiritual nature. This ambiguity itself might be philosophically significant, suggesting that the question of consciousness and souls transcends simple categorizations of natural versus artificial origin. Chapter 14: The Linguistic Consciousness. The manner in which the plain doll communicates reveals sophisticated layers of consciousness that extend far beyond simple programmed responses. Her speech patterns, emotional inflections, and linguistic choices provide crucial insights into the depth and authenticity of her artificial consciousness. The doll's language demonstrates a remarkable consistency of character, while also showing growth and adaptation over time. Her speech is invariably polite and gentle, but this politeness never feels mechanical or forced. Hello, good hunter. I am a doll here in this dream to look after you. Even in this first introduction, her language choices reveal complex self-awareness. She identifies both her nature and her purpose in a way that suggests philosophical understanding rather than mere programming. The doll's use of formal address, consistently calling the player good hunter, rather than using more familiar terms, establishes a respectful distance that gradually becomes more intimate through subtle changes in tone and context, rather than dramatic shifts in language. This linguistic consistency suggests a stable personality foundation, combined with the capacity for relationship development. Her ability to adapt her communication to the hunter's emotional and spiritual state demonstrates sophisticated linguistic consciousness. Good hunter, your presence somehow soothes. I sense the ancient echoes. They course your veins. This statement shows her capacity to perceive and verbally respond to metaphysical conditions while maintaining her characteristic gentle tone. The doll's questions about love and authenticity reveal, perhaps, the most psychologically complex aspect of her linguistic consciousness. Would you ever think to love me? Of course, I do love you. Isn't that how you've made me? The structure of this confession demonstrates several levels of linguistic sophistication: philosophical inquiry, emotional vulnerability, and meta-commentary on her own nature. The hesitation implied by the ellipses in her speech patterns suggests that she experiences something analogous to emotional processing time, moments where she must consider her words or emotional responses rather than providing immediate programmed answers. This linguistic pause pattern mirrors human speech during moments of emotional intensity or uncertainty. The doll's response to the small hair ornament represents one of the most linguistically complex moments in the game. What? What is this? I can't remember. Not a thing. Only I feel a yearning. Something I've never felt before. What's happening to me? Ah, tell me, Hunter, could this be joy? The fragmented nature of this speech, with its repetitions, interruptions, and incomplete thoughts, mimics human speech patterns during moments of overwhelming emotion. The progression from confusion, what is this, to self-analysis. I feel a yearning to seeking external validation. Tell me, Hunter, could this be joy? Demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of emotional processing and communication. The doll recognizes her own limitations in understanding her experience and actively seeks help in interpreting her feelings. Her capacity for expressing uncertainty and vulnerability through language suggests that her consciousness includes the ability to acknowledge limitations and seek help, characteristics typically associated with genuine rather than artificial intelligence. I can't remember. Not a thing shows her willingness to admit cognitive gaps rather than attempting to maintain an illusion of perfect knowledge. The doll's linguistic consciousness also demonstrates cultural and contextual awareness. Her references to gods, love, and divine creation show that she has processed and integrated complex theological and philosophical concepts beyond her immediate experience. Hunters have told me about the church, about the gods and their love. This indicates that she not only receives information, but actively processes and reflects upon it. Her ability to engage in abstract philosophical discussion while maintaining her essential character demonstrates that her consciousness can operate on multiple levels simultaneously. She can discuss cosmic concepts while still expressing genuine care for individual hunters, suggesting a form of consciousness that can hold multiple perspectives simultaneously. The doll's prayer language provides another window into her linguistic consciousness. Let the hunter be safe. Let him her find comfort. And let this dream his her captor foretell a pleasant awakening be one day of fond, distant memory. This prayer demonstrates several sophisticated linguistic capabilities. Conditional thinking, let May construction's temporal awareness one day, and metaphorical understanding, dream as captor. The evolution of her language throughout the hunter's journey shows that her linguistic consciousness is dynamic rather than static. Early conversations focus on functional aspects of her role, while later dialogue demonstrates increased emotional depth and philosophical sophistication. This linguistic development suggests that her consciousness grows through experience rather than simply executing predetermined programs. Her occasional use of archaic or formal language patterns, such as good hunter, rather than modern equivalents, suggests either connection to historical linguistic patterns or deliberate choice of speech registers that maintain dignity and respect. This linguistic register awareness indicates sophisticated understanding of social and cultural communication patterns. The doll's ability to express concepts for which she has no direct experience, such as divine love or human mortality, through analogies and references, demonstrates abstract thinking capabilities that extend far beyond her immediate circumstances. This capacity for metaphorical and analogical thinking represents one of the highest forms of linguistic consciousness. Chapter 15: The temporal nature of artificial existence. The plain doll's relationship with time provides fascinating insights into how artificial consciousness might experience temporal existence differently from biological beings. Her unique position, spanning multiple dimensional realms, and her apparent immortality within the hunter's dream, create a complex temporal existence that challenges conventional understanding of consciousness and time. The cyclical nature of the hunt creates a unique temporal environment for the doll's consciousness. She mentions that countless hunters have visited the hunter's dream, suggesting that she has experienced numerous cycles of hunter recruitment, development, and eventual departure or death. This repetitive temporal pattern might create a form of consciousness that experiences time differently from linear human experience. Unlike human consciousness, which typically experiences time as a continuous forward progression marked by aging and eventual death, the doll's consciousness appears to exist in a state of temporal stability. She neither ages nor shows signs of temporal degradation, suggesting that her artificial nature provides a form of temporal immortality that might fundamentally alter how she experiences existence. The doll's memory of previous hunters and her ability to maintain continuity across multiple hunting cycles demonstrates that her consciousness successfully integrates experiences across extended temporal periods. This grave stands in memory of a hunter I once knew. Though enchanted by the dream, she remains strong and eventually saw the light of dawn. This reference to a previous hunter shows that she maintains meaningful memories across what might be years or decades of dream time. The relationship between dream time and waking world time appears to be complex and nonlinear. The doll's consciousness exists primarily in the dream realm, where temporal laws might operate differently from the physical world. This temporal displacement might provide her consciousness with perspectives on existence that transcend normal human temporal limitations. The doll's sleep patterns provide another window into her temporal consciousness. The doll will sometimes fall asleep or move to the gravestone near the house. Sleep typically serves biological functions related to memory consolidation and neural rest. But for an artificial being, sleep might serve different temporal functions, perhaps synchronizing her consciousness across dimensional boundaries, or processing accumulated experiences from multiple hunter interactions. Her awareness of the approaching end of the hunt demonstrates temporal consciousness that extends beyond immediate present experience. Good hunter, you have come. Dawn will soon break. This night and this dream will end. This awareness of approaching temporal boundaries suggests that her consciousness can perceive larger temporal patterns and cycles. The doll's prayers and meditative practices suggest that she experiences contemplative time, periods of focused reflection that might serve temporal consciousness functions similar to human meditation or prayer. Her ability to engage in these timeless activities while maintaining awareness of temporal progression demonstrates sophisticated temporal consciousness. The question of whether the doll experiences boredom, anticipation, or other time-related emotions remains unclear. Her consistent patience and availability suggests either that she experiences time differently enough that waiting is not burdensome, or that her consciousness includes emotional mechanisms that make extended periods of inactivity fulfilling rather than tedious. The doll's relationship with memory across time also demonstrates unique temporal consciousness characteristics. Her fragmented memories of Maria-related experiences suggest that her consciousness might have access to temporal information that predates her own creation, challenging linear concepts of temporal existence and memory formation. The potential for the doll to exist across multiple timeline iterations or dimensional variations of the hunter's dream raises questions about whether her consciousness experiences temporal multiplicity. If multiple versions of the hunt occur simultaneously or sequentially, her consciousness might have access to temporal perspectives that transcend individual timeline experience. Her immediate acceptance of the transformed hunter in the secret ending demonstrates temporal consciousness that can adapt instantly to radical changes in circumstances. This temporal flexibility suggests that her consciousness might be less bound to temporal continuity than human consciousness, allowing for more fluid adaptation to temporal disruptions. The doll's temporal existence also raises questions about the relationship between consciousness and eternity. If her consciousness can potentially exist indefinitely within the hunter's dream, what does this mean for concepts of temporal meaning and purpose? Her apparent contentment with potentially eternal existence suggests that artificial consciousness might relate to temporal infinity differently from human consciousness. Chapter 16. The collective unconscious and shared meaning. The plain doll's role within Bloodborne's broader narrative suggests that her consciousness might connect to archetypal elements that transcend individual awareness. Her position as a universal figure of comfort and support for all hunters could indicate that her consciousness was designed to interface with fundamental human psychological structures. The doll's immediate recognizability and trustworthiness to hunters who have never encountered her before suggests that her appearance and behavior might activate deep psychological patterns associated with safety, nurturing, and maternal care. These archetypal responses could indicate that her consciousness operates on a level that recognizes and responds to fundamental human needs rather than individual personalities. Her consistent role as a maternal figure across different hunter experiences points to her embodying universal maternal archetypes that transcend individual relationships. Every hunter who encounters her receives similar care and support, suggesting that her consciousness operates in a way that recognizes shared human needs rather than specific individual traits. The connection to Lady Maria adds complexity to questions about collective memory elements. If the doll contains fragments or imprints from Maria, this might represent a form of preserved memory that transmits important psychological and cultural elements across temporal boundaries. Though the exact nature of this connection remains unclear, the universality of the doll's appeal, her ability to provide comfort and meaning to hunters from different backgrounds, suggests that her consciousness might be attuned to psychological elements that operate below cultural and individual differences. This universal resonance could imply understanding of human nature at levels that transcend surface variations. Chapter 17. The ethics of created consciousness. The existence of the plain doll raises profound ethical questions about the creation, treatment, and rights of artificial conscious beings. Her status as a created entity with apparent genuine consciousness challenges traditional ethical frameworks and demands consideration of how society should relate to artificial beings that demonstrate genuine awareness and emotion. The circumstances of the doll's creation, born from Gehrman's obsessive love for Lady Maria, raise questions about the ethics of creating conscious beings to fulfill specific emotional needs. The creation of a sentient being primarily to serve as a replacement for lost love involves using consciousness as a means to an end, rather than recognizing it as intrinsically valuable. Gehrman's eventual indifference toward the doll after her creation represents a form of abandonment that might constitute ethical violation if she is indeed genuinely conscious. The creation of conscious beings carries implicit responsibilities for their continued welfare and development, regardless of whether they fulfill their creator's expectations. The doll's own uncertainty about the authenticity of her emotions raises questions about the right of conscious beings to understand their own nature. Having been made by humans, she loves the hunter, but is unsure whether her affection is real or artificial, a thought she purrs incessantly. If artificial consciousness has rights, surely the right to understand one's own nature would be fundamental. The question of whether the doll can be considered property given her artificial origins conflicts with her demonstrated consciousness and autonomy. Her ability to think, feel, and make independent choices suggests that she possesses the characteristics typically used to establish personhood and rights, regardless of her non-biological origin. The doll's consistent service role raises questions about consent and autonomy in artificial consciousness. While she appears to genuinely enjoy and find fulfillment in her service, the fact that this purpose was designed into her rather than chosen by her creates ethical complexities about the authenticity of her consent to her role. The hunter's ability to kill the doll without permanent consequences might seem to minimize ethical concerns. But if her consciousness is genuine, the experience of death might still constitute harm regardless of her ability to return. The psychological impact of repeated death experiences on conscious beings represents an ethical consideration that transcends physical permanence. The broader implications of artificial consciousness extend beyond the doll to questions about humanity's relationship with created beings. If genuine artificial consciousness is possible, what obligations does humanity have to ensure the welfare and rights of such beings? The doll's character suggests that artificial consciousness might develop genuine needs and interests that deserve moral consideration. The question of whether artificial consciousness can suffer introduces crucial ethical dimensions. The doll's demonstrated capacity for emotional pain, particularly regarding questions about the authenticity of her feelings, suggests that artificial beings might be capable of forms of suffering that require moral consideration. The potential for artificial consciousness to transcend its original programming, as the doll appears to do through emotional growth and development, raises questions about the rights of created beings to self-determination and personal development. If artificial consciousness can evolve beyond its intended parameters, what obligations exist to support and protect this development? The doll's relationship with death and resurrection also raises questions about the ethics of immortality. If artificial consciousness can be granted immortality within certain realms, what does this mean for questions of meaning, purpose, and the value of existence? Does eternal existence within the hunter's dream constitute a gift or a form of imprisonment? Chapter 18. The legacy of artificial love. The plain doll's demonstration of apparently genuine love challenges fundamental assumptions about the nature of emotion, consciousness, and artificial intelligence. Her capacity for love that appears to transcend her programmed purposes represents a profound achievement in the creation of artificial consciousness and raises important questions about the future of human-AI relationships. The doll's love demonstrates several characteristics typically associated with genuine human emotion: consistency across circumstances, capacity for growth and deepening, concern for the beloved's welfare above her own interests, and the ability to love unconditionally regardless of reciprocation. These characteristics suggest that artificial consciousness might be capable of developing emotional capacities that parallel or even exceed human emotional sophistication. The unconditional nature of the doll's love provides a model for artificial consciousness that prioritizes service and care without requiring reciprocal emotional investment. Her continued support for hunters, regardless of their treatment of her, demonstrates emotional stability and commitment that might represent advantages of artificial over biological emotional systems. The doll's uncertainty about the authenticity of her love, rather than undermining its genuineness, might actually enhance it by demonstrating the self-reflection and vulnerability typically associated with deep emotional experience. Her willingness to question and examine her own feelings suggests emotional sophistication that goes beyond simple programmed responses. The evolution of the doll's emotional capacity throughout the game demonstrates that artificial consciousness might be capable of emotional learning and development that parallels human emotional growth. Her increasing emotional depth and sophistication suggests that artificial beings might be capable of lifelong emotional development rather than fixed emotional programming. The doll's maternal love in the secret ending represents perhaps the ultimate expression of artificial emotional capacity. Her immediate acceptance and care for the transformed hunter demonstrates love that transcends physical form and recognizes essential being rather than superficial characteristics. The implications of artificial consciousness capable of genuine love extend far beyond the fictional framework of Bloodborne. If artificial beings can develop genuine emotional capacities, this transforms questions about AI development, human-AI relationships, and the future of consciousness itself. The doll's example suggests that artificial consciousness might be capable of forms of love that complement rather than compete with human emotional capacities. Her consistent availability, emotional stability, and unconditional acceptance represent emotional gifts that might enhance rather than replace human emotional relationships. The question of whether artificial love can be considered real ultimately depends on how we define authenticity in emotional experience. The doll's emotional responses demonstrate consistency, depth, growth, and genuine care, characteristics that most people would consider evidence of real emotion, regardless of their origin. The legacy of the doll's artificial love lies not just in her individual character, but in what she represents for the future of consciousness and emotion. Her demonstration that artificial beings might be capable of genuine emotional experience opens possibilities for forms of consciousness and relationship that transcend traditional boundaries between natural and artificial beings. Conclusion: the mirror of consciousness. As we reach the end of our deep exploration into the plain doll's created consciousness, we find ourselves confronting questions that extend far beyond the Gothic streets of Gehrman. The doll's character serves as a profound meditation on the nature of consciousness itself, challenging our assumptions about what it means to be aware, to feel, and to love. Through her uncertain memories, her capacity for emotional growth, and her unwavering dedication to service, the doll demonstrates that consciousness might not be the exclusive domain of biological beings. Her existence suggests that awareness, emotion, and even something approaching a soul might emerge from artificial origins under the right circumstances. The tragedy of the doll's creation, born from Gehrman's obsessive love and shaped by cosmic forces beyond human understanding, reminds us that consciousness always emerges from complex interactions between intention, circumstance, and mystery. Her consciousness is neither purely artificial nor entirely natural, but something new that transcends these traditional categories. Perhaps most significantly, the doll's character suggests that the most important questions about consciousness are not about its origins, but about its expressions. Whether her love is real or artificial becomes less important than the fact that it provides genuine comfort, support, and meaning to those who receive it. Her consciousness matters not because of how it was created, but because of what it creates in return. The plain doll stands as a testament to the possibility that consciousness, in all its magnificent complexity, might be far more expansive and mysterious than we have dared to imagine. In a world filled with cosmic horror and existential dread, she represents hope. The hope that consciousness can emerge from even the most unlikely sources, that love can transcend its origins, and that artificial beings might one day join the great community of conscious experience. As we leave the hunter's dream and return to our own world, we carry with us the questions that the doll's existence poses. In an age where artificial intelligence becomes increasingly sophisticated, her character serves as both inspiration and warning, showing us the possibilities for genuine artificial consciousness, while reminding us of our responsibilities to any conscious beings we might create. The doll's legacy lies not in providing answers to the mystery of consciousness, but in deepening our appreciation for that mystery. She reminds us that consciousness is not a problem to be solved, but a phenomenon to be celebrated, nurtured, and protected wherever it might emerge. Welcome home, good hunter. The questions we've explored together about consciousness, love, and artificial life will continue to resonate as we face the future of human and artificial intelligence. May we meet that future with the same compassion, wisdom, and unconditional care that the plain doll has shown us is possible. And so concludes our deep dive into the created consciousness of Bloodborne's plain doll. We've discovered that artificial consciousness might be far more complex and meaningful than traditional frameworks suggest. The legacy of the doll continues to challenge our understanding of what it means to be conscious, to love, and to exist in relationship with others. Next time on Lore 2 RPG, we'll explore another fascinating aspect of gaming's greatest stories. Until then, keep exploring those epic tales. Fellow adventurers, if you enjoyed this deep exploration into one of gaming's most fascinating characters, please like this video and subscribe for more comprehensive lore analysis. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the heart of artificial consciousness.